I will tell you something about the eastern roads before I tell you about Marin. Every king who has ever ruled Veldrath has known the passes by name. The Kelvrath Ridge, the Aldenmere Narrows, the long southern spur the caravans use in autumn before the first frost seals it. I knew them the way I knew my own great hall by their shape in winter, by the sound the wind makes coming through the high cuts, by the weight of snow that closes them in the deep months. I had ridden every one. I had sent wolves down every trail. I thought I knew everything the eastern roads would show me. I did not know her. Marin had served the border garrison at Veldrath for 4 years before I understood what that meant. She came without a pack mark, without a house name, without any letter of standing. She arrived in the company of a gray wolf she had found injured on the Aldenmere road, carrying it in a canvas sling, because its foreleg would not bear weight, and she set it down in the garrison yard, and asked the sergeant where she might find clean cloth and a fire. The sergeant, a practical man named Wren, showed her the supply room and did not ask questions, because the wolf had already chosen to stay. After that she stayed too. She healed what needed healing and drew maps in the hours when the garrison was quiet. That was the thing I did not understand until too late, the maps. Not the garrison charts, not the official survey lines sent down from the capital. Her maps. She had walked every road in the eastern range herself, and she drew them from memory in a hand so fine and exact that the first time I saw one, unrolled on the garrison table, I thought it had come from the Royal Archive. The sergeant told me it had not. She had drawn it from 3 seasons of walking. I looked at it for a long time. I did not look at her. That is the truth of it, and I am not proud of it. She was at the table beside the map when I examined it, refilling the ink pot, and I did not ask her name. My wolf stirred, something low and restless in my chest that I had learned over 30 years to identify and set aside, and I set it aside again. I was the Alpha King of Veldrath. I had a treaty to conclude and a council that wanted an alliance Luna chosen before the winter roads closed. I had obligations older than my own wanting. 3 days later, I announced the choice. I said it in the great hall to the assembled border lords in the formal language the treaty required. An alliance Luna from the northern river clans, a dignified arrangement, a practical settlement of 3 generations of border disputes. The lords nodded. My wolf went very quiet. I told myself that was agreement. Marin left before dawn the next morning. The sergeant told me this when I came to the garrison at first light to review the eastern scouting reports. She had rolled her maps, packed her satchel, said nothing to anyone about where she was going, and walked out the eastern gate in the dark. The sergeant had tried to speak with her. She had smiled at him, he said, in a way he could not describe, and told him she had a road she'd been meaning to walk before the passes closed. I did not pursue her. I told myself she was a free woman, owed nothing, going where she chose. My wolf did not agree. My wolf had gone still in a way I had never felt before, not quiet, not agreeable, but the absolute silence of something that has made a decision and is waiting for me to make mine. I did not make it quickly enough. On the evening of the second day, the eastern scouts came back without 2 of their riders. Hostile outriders from beyond the Kelvrath Pass, a rough band that had been working the high-altitude caravan routes for 2 seasons, taking travelers and ransoming them to the lowland trading posts, had been seen on the Aldenmere Narrows. One of the missing scouts sent a message back through a wolf that had found its own way home. The riders had a woman, packless, a map satchel. I was on my horse before the wolf had finished shaking the snow from its coat. I took 6 garrison wolves and Wren, and I rode hard for the Narrows. I do not know what I was thinking. That is not true. I know exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking about a woman who had walked out of my garrison at dawn without asking anything of anyone, carrying her maps and her healer's kit, and 4 years of roads she had learned herself. And I was thinking about how I had stood at a table and looked at the finest piece of cartography I had ever seen and not asked her name. My wolf burned steady the whole way, not frantic, not urgent in the way that signals desperation. Steady, like a coal banked for a long winter, the kind of heat that does not diminish. We found the camp on the morning of the third day, tucked into a fold of rock just below the Kelvrath Ridge. We found it empty. The fire was cold. The camp stakes had been pulled cleanly, no rush, no sign of fight. One of the garrison wolves nosed the ground for a long time and then sat down and looked at me with an expression I could only describe as resigned. I stood in the empty camp and tried to read it. There had been perhaps 8 riders, the hoofprints said so, and the firing was sized for a group intending to stay more than a night. Whatever they had waited for, they had not waited long enough. No torn cloth, no blood, no marks in the earth that suggested anyone had been dragged. Near the eastern camp stake, a small pile of 3 stones sat in a line pointing toward the ridge, the kind of thing you place when you want to leave a direction without leaving words. I had never seen that before. I did not know then who had placed them. Wren found the map satchel first. It was set against a rock at the edge of the camp, upright, as if placed there deliberately. I opened it. All her maps were inside, rolled and tied in their proper order, undamaged. There was a fresh one on top, drawn on a piece of cloth torn from something, in ink that had been mixed, I realized, from pine bark and meltwater, the kind of improvised ink a healer would know how to make in the field. It showed the camp, the ridge above it, the eastern descent, and a route I did not recognize. A narrow traverse below the false ridgeline that did not appear on any garrison chart, cutting east, and then south in a long arc that would bring a person down to the valley road well below the narrows. It was not a message. She had not written anything on it. It was simply a map of where she had gone. I looked at it for a long time in the gray morning light, the cold coming down off the Kelvrath Ridge and the wolves standing quietly around me. My wolf mark, which I had worn silver on my left wrist for 31 years without a mate to answer it, had been warming steadily since the garrison. Now it was almost too warm to ignore. I pressed my thumb against it and felt it pulse once, like a second heartbeat. I said to Wren, "She got herself out." He said, "Yes." I said, "She drew us a map of how." He said, "Yes." I folded the cloth map, put it in my cloak, and we turned south. We did not know, until the garrison rider found us on the valley road in the early morning of the 4th day, that she had already beaten us home. The rider was a young wolf named Pelin who had the look of someone who had been sent on an urgent errand and was very pleased about it. He said, "She came in through the eastern gate at first light, sir, on foot. She had 3 wolves with her." I said, "What wolves?" He said, "From the hills, sir. They appeared to be following her, or traveling with her. Wren's sergeant says one of them is carrying her satchel. She declined to take it back." I rode the rest of the way in a state I did not have a word for. Not relief, relief was too small. Not joy, joy was too simple. Something that had been building for 4 years and 3 days of mountain roads, something my wolf had known before I did and had been patient about in the way that only certain very old things are patient, which is to say without anger, only a long and certain waiting. She was standing in the garrison yard when I rode through the gate. The morning was just fully light, cold and clear, the kind of autumn morning that smells like iron and wood smoke, and she was standing near the garrison wall with a tin of something warm in her hands, and 3 wolves arranged around her feet in the loose, easy way that wolves settle when they have decided to stay. She was wearing her own cloak, which had a tear across the left shoulder that had been neatly mended with something that was not quite the right color, and her hair was loose, and she looked, if anything, slightly tired, the way a person looks after a long walk they had been planning anyway. She looked at me when I dismounted. She did not look surprised. The bond broke open the moment my boots touched the ground. That is the only way I know to describe it. 31 years of silver, a warmth I had learned to treat as background noise, a pulse I had felt and set aside at garrison tables and treaty halls, and every road I had ever believed I knew better than anyone, and it went from warm to blazing in the space of a single heartbeat. Gold so bright I felt it before I saw it, both wrists at once. I heard her draw a short breath. I looked at her hands around the tin and saw the same light there, the same gold answering. I crossed the yard. The 3 hill wolves parted from me without being asked. I said, "You got out yourself." She said, "The route was straightforward once I found the traverse. It is on your maps now, the cloth one in the satchel." I said I saw it. She looked at me steadily. She had gray eyes which I had not known, because I had not looked at her properly before, and they were very calm in the way of someone who has spent a long time alone in difficult country and found it less frightening than expected. I said her name, Marin, the first time I had ever said it. She did not look away. I said, "I owe you an account of several things. The announcement I made 3 days ago is not concluded. There was a practical arrangement I had agreed to for reasons I told myself were sufficient, and I was wrong about that, and I have been wrong about a number of things in this garrison yard for 4 years, and I would rather not continue to be wrong about them." She was quiet for a moment. She said, "That is a long way around a short subject." I said, "Yes." She said, "Are you asking me to stay?" I looked at the gold burning steady on both our wrists, the garrison wolves that had come in from the yard perimeter and were standing in a loose ring behind me without being commanded, Wren at the gate watching with the expression of a man who has been waiting for something and is glad to see it arrive. I said, "I am asking you to let me name you here, before these wolves and this garrison, as my fated mate and my Luna, and to stay as long as it suits you, and to go where you choose, and I will walk every road in the eastern range with you if you will have me on them." She considered this. She said, "The traverse I found needs to be added to the garrison charts properly. The cloth version is readable, but the lines are not precise." I said, "We can do that today." She said, "All right." She held out her hand, the gold still blazing quietly on her wrist, warm and undemanding, the way certain things are when they have been waiting a long time and are simply glad to be done waiting. I took it. Wren called the garrison to order. The wolves in the yard settled. The 3 hill wolves, who had carried a woman out of a hostile camp and across 2 days of mountain road, and evidently saw no reason to stop now, stayed. The sergeant brought the garrison ledger to the gate post and drew a line through the entry that read "Road Healer," no rank, packless, and wrote beneath it, in the plain, clear hand of a practical man who has seen something he intends to record correctly, a new line. I read it later when the yard had quieted and the morning had turned fully bright, Luna of the Eastern Road. He had chosen the title himself without being asked. I thought it was exactly right. The wolves she had brought down from the hills stayed 3 days, sleeping in the garrison yard at night and following her through the halls during the day with the devoted, placid attention of animals who have adopted a person and see no reason to make it complicated. On the 2nd day, the oldest of the 3, a large gray animal with a torn ear and a settled manner, took up a position beside the garrison gate and did not move from it except to eat. Wren said it was guarding. I thought it knew something about roads and homecomings that the rest of us were still learning. We drew the traverse together that first day, properly onto the garrison charts. She sat at the table where I had once looked at her finest map and failed to ask her name, and she drew the route from memory, precise and unhurried, and I sat beside her and did not look away. I do not think she had ever been lost, not truly. She had simply been on a road she had not finished drawing yet, and when she was done, she came home.